The Industrial Revolution should not have begun in Britain. Popular history prefers stories of destiny and genius. Britain is often portrayed as the inevitable birthplace of the modern world. But rewind the clock to the year 1600, and on the edge of Europe stood a small island with limited land, a modest population, and no overwhelming concentration of wealth or power. Hardly an obvious candidate to reshape the world. Yet it did happen. So why Britain? The Industrial Revolution was not a carefully designed leap toward progress. It was a great escape, a narrow, risky exit taken by a system that was running out of options. At Worldline, we follow the invisible constraints that shape what societies can and cannot do. History is not a sequence of bold choices. It is a chain of pressures, constraints, and forced adaptations. For nearly 5 centuries, from the 14th to the 19th century, the planet endured climatic deterioration known as the Little Ice Age. Cold shortened growing seasons. Hunger became structural. Ecological stress cascaded into social and political instability. What followed was not a single collapse, but centuries of civilizational trials under pressure. An extended stress test in which some societies adapted, some transformed, some rose in unexpected ways, and others simply fell apart. On a remote island at the western edge of Europe, this pressure set off a cascade of failures that forced society into a passive and desperate escape. Britain did not choose this path. It was driven into it. Small climatic shifts become catastrophic at the margins of an agricultural world. In England, the Thames froze solid in 1573 and again in 1608, and Londoners famously held frost fairs on the ice. Beneath the spectacle, however, the foundations of subsistence were trembling. Market records show wheat prices in London spiking 2- and 3-fold during the 1590s and the 1640s, while wages remained largely flat. This exposed the brutal mechanics later described as the Malthusian trap. In a pre-industrial society, food production advances slowly, while population growth, when unchecked, accelerates rapidly. Any surplus is eventually consumed by more mouths. The Little Ice Age did not invent poverty. It erased the margin for error. England was no longer enduring occasional bad harvests. It was repeatedly colliding with a biological ceiling. Even in peacetime, the land alone could no longer sustain the people living on it. For centuries, the English countryside had possessed a buffer against such shocks: the commons. Villagers held customary rights to graze animals, gather firewood, and glean leftover grain. This was the safety net of the pre-modern world. Under sustained climatic pressure, that net tore. For landowners, supporting large numbers of struggling tenants meant absorbing the full volatility of grain prices, unpaid rents, and mounting unrest. There was another colder calculation: enclosure. Scattered strips and common waste were consolidated into enclosed fields, often converted to pasture, which required fewer laborers and proved more resilient in poor years. This was more than a dispute over property. It was a form of social triage. Between 1604 and 1914, Parliament passed more than 5,200 enclosure acts, fencing off roughly 6.8 million acres, over 1/5 of England. The countryside did not vanish, but it was systematically thinned. The landless departed first, followed by entire families. They were not drawn toward factories, but pushed off land that could no longer hold them. Where did the displaced go? The answer was London. The city's growth functioned as a fever chart of a civilization under strain. A population of roughly 200,000 in 1600 surpassed 400,000 by 1650 and approached 600,000 by 1700, making London the largest city in Europe. Crucially, this expansion was not driven by industrial employment. Factories, as we understand them, did not yet exist. People came because the meaning of survival had changed, from what one could grow to what one could purchase with wages. The city became a vast system for staying alive, yet it created a stark new dilemma. How do you keep hundreds of thousands of people from freezing in a cold, damp climate? The Little Ice Age thus produced a dual crisis, of food and of heat. British life rested on wood, for cooking, heating, crafts, and above all, for the Royal Navy. A single first-rate ship of the line consumed up to 4,000 mature oak trees. By the mid-17th century, forests within roughly 50 miles of London were largely exhausted. Around the capital, wood prices rose to 5 or 7 times their medieval levels. The city faced energy bankruptcy. The only alternative lay underground: coal. It was filthy, smoky, and notoriously difficult to extract. Londoners despised it. Coal was not chosen because it was better, but because it was the last option available. By 1700, London was burning more than 640,000 tons of coal annually, making it the most fossil fuel-dependent city on Earth. But extracting that coal required solving a problem that had constrained societies for millennia: water. Shallow seams were quickly depleted. To dig deeper meant confronting the water table, as groundwater flooded shafts and destroyed entire investments. As early as 1610, mine owners warned Parliament that coal production was limited not by geology, but by hydrology. A flooded mine represented total loss. Defeating water demanded machinery and capital on a scale no short-term enterprise could justify. In most early modern societies, this was where the story would have ended. In Britain, however, something fundamental had changed, not underground, but in the relationship between power and property. In 1688, Britain underwent the Glorious Revolution. Its political legacy is complex, but its economic consequence was stark. It made the future predictable. James II was removed not for weakness, but for capriciousness, for arbitrary taxation and property seizure. The settlement that followed established a radical principle. A contract with the state could outlast the monarch. Control over taxation and borrowing shifted decisively to Parliament. The numbers tell the story. In 1694, the government chartered the Bank of England to secure a long-term loan. Borrowing costs, once 10% or higher, began a sustained decline toward 3%. For the first time, investors could trust that agreements made today would be honored decades later. Capital, the most cautious of forces, finally felt secure enough to be buried deep underground for a generation. This institutional shift invented no machines. It made the financing of machines possible. With capital secured, the long gamble could be taken. In 1712, at a coal mine in the English Midlands, an ironmonger named Thomas Newcomen put his atmospheric engine into operation. It was enormous and spectacularly inefficient, converting less than 1% of its fuel's heat into useful work. It consumed coal at prodigious rates, and it performed a single task: pumping water. It worked. For the first time, mines could remain dry at depths beyond the reach of men, horses, or traditional pumps. The Newcomen engine did not create demand for coal. The frozen, deforested cities had already done that. It unlocked supply. The steam engine, the emblem of a new age, was not born in a factory. It was born in a flooded pit, built for the grim purpose of fighting water. Yet energy alone was insufficient. An industrial system requires vast quantities of raw materials and reliable markets for its output. Britain, a small island, faced a severe geographic constraint. It overcame this through what economic historians call ghost acreage. Through Atlantic trade and colonial power, Britain effectively annexed the productive land of other continents. North American grain, Caribbean sugar, and colonial cotton and timber provided, by the early 19th century, the equivalent of roughly 25 million additional acres, more than Britain's own arable land. This ghost acreage was not merely a source of profit, it was a critical shock absorber. It solved the twin problems of scale: inputs flowing in and finished goods flowing out. Empire did not cause the Industrial Revolution, but it sustained it once it began. In retrospect, the Industrial Revolution was not a blueprint. It was a fracture propagating under simultaneous stress. Climate pressure destabilized agriculture. Agricultural failure pushed people into cities. Urban energy crises forced a turn to coal. Coal extraction demanded steam power. And all of it depended on political institutions that protected long-term capital. Britain's trajectory was one specific escape route through the civilizational filter of the Little Ice Age, substituting mineral energy for living land and using global reach to break local limits. In the same age of cold, on the opposite side of the world, Japan pursued a radically different solution: industrious revolution, giving rise to its own distinctive form of capitalism. In the next episode, we arrive in Edo period Japan to explore how a civilization built its own version of modernity without a single steam engine. Worldline, decoding the logic that shapes the world.